As students head back to classrooms and college campuses this week, we are reminded just how easily a day of learning can turn into terror. As we told you earlier in this newscast, we're still learning more information about an active shooter situation at a Minneapolis school where several children were hit with gunfire. Some ultimately passed away. This comes after some college campuses reported shooting hoaxes over the past few weeks. Here to talk about what goes into responding to these types of reports is Jason Russell, the president and founder of Secure Environment Consultants. Now, Jason, you originally started this company in response to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings, correct?
Yes, we did.
And that was back in 2012. And here we are 13 years later with a similar shooting, with dozens of similar situations happening between all of that time. What do you think could have been done to help save more lives here? And what can we all do as parents or as staff members at a school?
I think the overall thing that's going to help is identifying these behaviors in people that they're exhibiting prior to, committing this offense. As you're going to see with the situation in Minnesota, as well as every other situation we've seen, these people often exhibit concerning behaviors that people pick up on in their life and say, hey, I think this person might be, experiencing something and need some help. The problem is people don't take that information and do anything with it. So I think until we start understanding that this is part of the mental health issue that we're facing here, we're going to continue to see these issues. Hardening targets and continue to just put more and more security features in place isn't going to solve the issue. We have to really get to the root cause, which is mental health crisis and things like that.
As someone who has been called in to help during crisis situations, including mass shootings, is there a chain of survival or command when dealing with these types of emergencies?
Yeah, obviously the first thing is you want to address the threat as quickly as possible, right? So you want to try to train people, whether it's staff and sometimes even students, on how to respond in that moment, right? What can I do to get myself safe and hopefully avoid becoming a victim? And then once those issues have been addressed, it's really about, the response, law enforcement's response to the scene, and then all the recovery issues. Having dealt with these situations before, the emergency, the incident is usually a minute or two in length, but the impact of these situations, this is going to be a lifetime of impact, not only on this community, but certainly on those kids that were involved and the families. This is something that lasts forever.
At what point is information sent out to students or people in the area to help keep them safe?
We recommend our clients that you really communicate with parents as quickly, up front before the school year even starts. And having an assessment done to say what are our weaknesses, what are the potential risks that we face, right? So we work with a lot of schools, just like this school in Minnesota, that have these gatherings where you're taking kids from the school and you're putting them in a mass. So when you have those large gatherings of people, that creates an increased risk. So really saying, okay, how can we mitigate this risk so that we hope nothing ever does happen, but if it does, we've at least had some plan in place. And then communicating those plans, obviously, to your school community, communicating to your staff, training them on what to do, and practicing in some cases, even with the students in the form of drills and other things like that.
And taking all of this into account, is there a way that a school can prevent a hoax from happening, or is it just something that's better to just take seriously the first time than to dismiss it?
I think obviously because there is so many real incidents, it's tough to take what eventually ends up being a hoax and just, ignoring it. I think the issue, truthfully, is understanding some of the how that communication comes in. Often a real active shooter situation, there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds, of 911 calls. They're coming in on the 911 line. They're not coming in on the non-emergency number. So I think some of this, truthfully, is a communication issue where, the dispatchers that are receiving these calls need to be relaying information that, hey, maybe this is a single call. We've had no other calls about this incident. You're keying in on some of the things that a caller might say that might indicate that they don't really have knowledge of the location. Or if the call comes in on a non-emergency number, most people, if they're faced with a shooting, aren't going to look up the non-emergency phone line to the dispatch center. They're going to call 911.
All right, Jason, thank you for taking the time to join us on this important story as we follow the latest developments.
Thank you.